Black CEO denied service at her own bank, 7 minutes later. Manager gets fired on the spot. Jennifer Keller's voice dripped with condescension as she slid the withdrawal slip back across the counter, her eyes barely masking the disdain she felt toward the woman standing before her. "We can't just hand out cash to anyone who walks in here. Especially not amounts like this." The marble lobby of Meridian Financial's flagship branch echoed with her words, catching the attention of a growing circle of staff. Whispers floated through the air. One young teller leaned over to her colleague, barely loud enough to be heard. "Yeah, right. She doesn't even look like she has that kind of money." Laughter rippled among them, cruel and careless. Yet, amidst the subtle sneers and overt mockery, Angela Johnson stood tall, her dignity unshaken even as humiliation crept in by the second. What these employees failed to realize was that their snap judgment, their sneering whispers, were about to unravel everything they thought they knew: their careers, their reputations, and the very future of this bank, because the woman they scorned was no ordinary customer. She was the CEO. And in that moment, poised calmly at the counter, Angela was about to rewrite the rules of respect, power, and justice in the heart of Meridian Financial. 25 years earlier, Angela Johnson stood behind a different counter, dressed in a crisp uniform, a name tag pinned neatly that read, "Teller Trainee." She was young, determined, and far from the executive suites she would one day command. Her journey was not paved with privilege or easy connections but forged through relentless determination, sharp intelligence, and an unwavering work ethic. From humble beginnings as a teller, she climbed steadily, mastering every role with precision. From loan officer to branch manager, then regional director, each promotion a testament to her grit and skill. Along the way, she earned her MBA from Harvard, shattered records across 3 divisions, and earned a reputation as the problem solver who could revive struggling branches. Yet, despite these monumental achievements, when the time came for the bank's CEO to retire, whispers behind closed doors questioned whether Angela was ready to lead, doubts not rooted in her qualifications but in the color of her skin. Still, when the board made their decision, Angela broke barriers as the first black woman to helm Meridian Financial. Her acceptance speech was both gracious and resolute, promising a future where every client, employee, and community would be met with unwavering respect and excellence, no exceptions. Beneath the polished surface of Meridian Financial's glowing satisfaction scores, Angela Johnson sensed a troubling undercurrent, one that raw numbers and official reports dared not reveal. Customer complaints, though sparse on paper, whispered stories of exclusion, frustration, and cold dismissal, particularly among minority clients whose voices had long been muffled by institutional neglect. Rather than rely on sanitized data or second-hand accounts, Angela resolved to uncover the truth firsthand. Embracing the bold strategy of going undercover within her own organization, draped in unassuming navy and dark slacks, she stepped through the revolving doors of the flagship branch with a purpose that transcended her CEO title. Her modest attire and understated demeanor masked the fierce determination burning within as she took a seat in the waiting area, ostensibly absorbed by her phone but acutely aware of every interaction unfolding around her. What Angela witnessed in those opening moments was a stark tableau of inequality. A sharply dressed white businessman greeted with smiles and direct escort to service. An elderly Asian couple dismissed with a cold gesture toward a numbered queue. A young white woman engaged in friendly chatter as her transaction flew through in minutes, and then a Hispanic janitor, subjected to suspicious scrutiny, demands for multiple forms of identification, and a grueling 10-minute wait for a simple check cashing. This pattern, repeated time and again, was a damning indictment of bias woven into the fabric of the bank's daily operations. Time slipped by, 37 minutes of waiting, while 3 white customers who arrived after her were served swiftly, their transactions completed without question. When Angela finally approached the teller window, the once warm smiles faded into hesitant frowns, the air thick with unspoken suspicion. It was here, in this charged atmosphere, that the invisible walls of prejudice revealed themselves most starkly, exposing the silent chasm between Meridian Financial's public face and its hidden reality. Angela Johnson moved through the bustling Meridian Financial flagship branch with the quiet resolve of someone carrying a mission heavier than mere banking transactions. Her attire, a simple navy hoodie, dark slacks, and a modest cap, rendered her invisible in the sea of polished suits and meticulously coiffed hair, allowing her to observe without drawing undue attention. From her vantage point in the waiting area, she witnessed a vivid display of contrast that laid bare the unspoken rules governing customer treatment. A sharply dressed white businessman arrived and was met with immediate warmth, a beaming smile from the greeter, a guiding hand to an available desk, and swift, efficient service that signaled unquestioned privilege. Moments later, an elderly Asian couple entered, their presence greeted with a curt finger pointed toward a seating area, the cold formality stripping away any pretense of welcome. Nearby, a young white woman sauntered to the quick service counter, engaged in light-hearted banter with the teller about weekend plans as her transaction was completed in less than 2 minutes. Then came the starkest jolt. A Hispanic man in janitorial work clothes approached the same counter and was met with heightened suspicion. The teller's demeanor shifted abruptly, questions multiplied, requests for identification stacked, and a suspicious, lingering gaze scrutinized every move. What should have been a routine check-cashing transaction stretched agonizingly into nearly 10 minutes. This pattern, a cruel choreography repeated again and again, etched itself into Angela's consciousness with painful clarity. By the time her turn came, she had already waited 37 minutes, watching as 3 white customers who arrived after her were welcomed forward with practiced ease. Approaching the teller window, Angela met a smile that faltered. Rachel, a young teller, now guarded and cautious, struggled to mask the change in tone. The air thickened with unspoken questions, and a quiet tension settled as Angela slid her ID and a withdrawal slip across the counter, requesting to access $115 from her own account. The teller's eyes widened, she scanned the driver's license, then Angela's face, and back again, as if confirming an impossible truth. This was no ordinary withdrawal, it was a test of patience, resilience, and quiet strength in the face of systemic doubt. As Angela stood poised, unyielding, the invisible weight of prejudice pressed down, and the true cost of discrimination, the slow erosion of dignity, played out in the small but searing moments behind that counter. As Angela Johnson calmly requested the withdrawal, the atmosphere behind the counter shifted palpably. Rachel, the young teller who had greeted her with polite indifference, suddenly faltered, her smile fading into a strained, hesitant expression. The simple act of sliding a withdrawal slip accompanied by valid identification became a catalyst for scrutiny that felt anything but routine. Rachel's eyes widened as she studied Angela's driver's license, her gaze darting back and forth between the photo and the woman before her, as if the two images couldn't possibly align. A whisper to Mark, the senior teller stationed at the neighboring window, summoned him with an unspoken urgency, and moments later, he appeared behind Rachel, his towering presence casting a shadow of silent authority across the counter. His voice, deliberately raised just enough to draw attention, pierced the hushed murmur of the lobby. Is there a problem here? The question hung in the air, not directed at Rachel nor Angela, but carrying the unmistakable weight of accusation. Customers nearby instinctively turned their heads, the tension in the room thickened. Angela, maintaining her composure despite the rising humiliation, placed her bank card next to her ID with quiet firmness. No problem at all, she said evenly. I am simply making a withdrawal from my own account. Mark, however, refused to relent. He picked up the ID once more, scrutinizing it as if to uncover a hidden flaw, before muttering about unusual activity on these types of accounts lately. The vague insinuation loaded with suspicion. Richard, another staff member who had lingered nearby, joined the exchange with a sneer barely concealed behind a false sweetness. We just need to verify that the funds are actually yours, he said, his tone dripping with patronizing condescension, a clear attempt to mask their prejudices under the guise of security protocol. His gaze roamed dismissively over Angela's modest clothing and natural hair, as if judging her worthiness to possess such funds. The humiliation was intentional, a calculated performance designed to intimidate and demean. Yet Angela's voice remained steady, her posture unyielding. I understand the need for security, she replied calmly. I have provided all necessary identification and am a long-standing customer of this bank. I would like to complete my transaction now. The staff's laughter, whispered judgments, and conspiring glances painted a vivid portrait of the systemic bias festering beneath the bank's polished veneer, a bias that Angela, with unwavering grace, was determined to confront and dismantle, one measured moment at a time. Angela's quiet insistence hung heavy in the air as tension crackled through the marble-lined lobby. Just when it seemed the standstill might stretch indefinitely, Jennifer Keller, the branch manager, strode confidently across the floor, her heels clicking sharply against the polished stone, an audible proclamation of authority. Her expression was a masterful mask of concern layered over steel-hard condescension, the kind honed by years of unquestioned control. Without bothering to introduce herself or inquire about Angela's identity, Jennifer assumed command of the situation with practiced ease. "Ma'am," she began, her voice silky yet edged with dismissal, "there appears to be some confusion about your withdrawal request." Angela met her gaze steadily, refusing to yield. "There's no confusion on my part," she responded firmly. "I am here to access my own funds." Jennifer's smile was cold, failing to reach her eyes as she leaned slightly closer, her tone lowering into a whisper that carried enough venom to be heard throughout the room. $15,000 is a significant amount. May I ask what it is for? This question, curiously absent when white customers made similar or larger transactions, hung like a challenge in the air. A thinly veiled attempt to undermine Angela's legitimacy. Around them, the bustling bank quieted as if the marble walls themselves held their breath, witnessing a confrontation heavy with unspoken prejudice. Jennifer's words sliced through the space. "This bank prides itself on dignity. And we serve a certain class of customers. Unfortunately, we cannot serve you here." The mask slipped in those few damning words, revealing the naked bias that had fueled the coldness of every look and lingering glance. Angela felt the familiar tightening in her chest, a painful echo of every time she'd been underestimated, dismissed, or reduced to a stereotype in her life and career. Behind Jennifer, staff exchanged furtive, knowing glances. Rachel averted her eyes, hands nervously twisting a stack of deposit slips. Silent yet complicit, Mark and Richard wore their amusement openly, smirks and snickers barely concealed as they reveled in the spectacle at Angela's expense. The humiliation was deliberate, a performance staged by those who believed their power unchallengeable. Yet amidst the swirling storm of prejudice, Angela stood unwavering, a beacon of quiet strength and unyielding dignity, ready to expose the rot beneath the polished surface and demand the justice long overdue. Angela's composed resistance was met with a sharp escalation of hostility as the atmosphere thickened with simmering contempt. Without hesitation, Richard, emboldened by his manager Jennifer Keller's presence, let his true colors show, his voice laced with scorn and mockery as he leaned casually against the counter, eyes gleaming with derision. "Did you come into some money recently? A settlement? An inheritance? Or maybe you laundered it?" The accusation, unspoken yet unmistakable, echoed loudly enough for nearby customers to catch, turning curious gazes Angela's way. The implication was clear and cruel. There was no legitimate way a black woman could have access to such a large sum except through luck or illicit means. Dismissing years of hard-earned success and determination, a young white mother waiting at the adjacent window instinctively pulled her children closer, whispering warnings that painted Angela as suspicious and unwelcome, a living lesson in bias for the next generation. Angela drew a slow, deliberate breath, her composure remarkable in the face of such blatant hostility. "I would like to speak with someone who has the authority to override these baseless concerns," she said, each word carefully measured and resolute, a steady beacon amid the storm of prejudice. Jennifer's smile tightened, a flash of anger crossing her features at being challenged, but she masked it with practiced control. "I am the highest authority in this branch," she snapped, leaning in with a lowered voice that still carried across the lobby. "And there is no one else for you to speak with." Her words dripped with insinuation as she added, "Perhaps you would be more comfortable at the check cashing place down the street. They're more accustomed to handling your type of banking needs." The dismissal was so blatant, so deeply disrespectful, that it sent a collective shudder through the onlookers. The customers, once absorbed in their own affairs, now witnessed a stark exhibition of institutional prejudice disguised as authority. Angela's silent strength stood in sharp contrast to the escalating venom. her every gesture radiating unshakable dignity even as the bank's walls seemed to close in around her. Around them, the cacophony of cash-counting machines hummed obliviously. The security cameras mounted high, capturing every inflection, every glance, every microaggression with chilling clarity. As Richard smirked and Mark exchanged amused looks, Rachel's discomfort grew palpable, her eyes flickered downward, her body tense, a silent testimony to the moral conflict roiling beneath the surface. The scene was a microcosm of systemic failure, a moment suspended in time where power, prejudice, and persistence collided in the cold heart of Meridian Financial's flagship branch. In the hushed aftermath of a storm that had shaken Meridian Financial to its core, Angela Johnson stood as a solitary pillar of unwavering resolve amidst the charged silence of the flagship branch. The air, once thick with whispered judgments and veiled scorn, now pulsed with a profound stillness as the gravity of the moment settled over everyone present. Customers lingered where they stood, their eyes wide with a mixture of shock and reluctant recognition, while the remaining staff hovered behind counters like a stunned audience, each grappling with the undeniable truth laid bare before them. The imposing marble pillars and gleaming glass that framed the lobby seemed to amplify the weight of accountability now resting squarely on the institution's shoulders. Angela's gaze swept across the room, taking in faces etched with a gamut of emotions, from shame and regret to quiet contemplation and, in some, a flicker of hope. This was more than a confrontation, it was a reckoning. A pivotal moment that transcended the boundaries of ordinary business and touched the very soul of the bank's identity. With measured calm, her voice rang out, not in anger, but in resolute clarity that demanded both attention and reflection. What unfolded here today is not the failure of a few individuals, she declared, but a reflection of a culture that allowed such choices to seem acceptable. This culture must change, and it starts now. Around her, heads bowed or nodded in solemn acknowledgement, the unspoken admission of long-ignored truths settling heavily in the collective consciousness. Meridian Financial exists to serve every customer with dignity, respect, and fairness, Angela continued, each word a deliberate hammer strike against complacency. These are not mere words on a mission statement. They are the standards by which every interaction, every decision, will be measured moving forward. Behind her, Diane Porter, the indomitable head of operations, was already mobilizing the machinery of change. Fingers flew across tablets, commands issued with unwavering urgency as emergency protocols were activated, temporary leadership structures established, access credentials secured, and a comprehensive audit of every branch and department ordered. The message was unequivocal. No corner of the institution would remain untouched by scrutiny. Every role, from teller to top executive, would be held accountable not only for profitability but for equitable service. In this crucible of transformation, Angela approached Rachel, the young teller whose visible discomfort during the ordeal had marked her apart from the rest. Tears streamed down Rachel's face as Angela's quiet words reached her, words of understanding, encouragement, and a call to courage. Acknowledging what is wrong, even when it comes from authority, is the first step toward making it right, Angela said softly, planting a seed of hope amidst the rubble of disillusionment. It was a moment pregnant with possibility, a chance to rewrite not just policies, but hearts and minds. As the branch slowly stirred from its stunned silence, the weight of history gave way to the promise of renewal. The cameras that had once recorded scenes of injustice now captured the dawning of accountability. The first flickers of a future where respect and fairness would no longer be optional, but mandatory. In the days that followed, Meridian Financial would not merely recover from this crisis, it would redefine itself. Guided by the unshakable conviction of a leader who refused to let prejudice stand unchallenged and a team ready to embrace the hard work of change. 6 months after that fateful day, Angela Johnson returned to the Meridian Financial branches, not as a disguised observer seeking faults, but as a vigilant witness to the profound transformation she had ignited. Gone were the days of hidden biases and whispered exclusions. Instead, she found herself amidst a landscape reshaped by relentless dedication to equity and inclusion. The air in each branch buzzed not with suspicion but with purposeful engagement. As employees embraced a new ethos that placed respect and fairness at the very heart of their service. Angela's visits were unannounced. A deliberate choice to capture the unvarnished reality of progress. And with each step she took, she observed subtle yet significant changes, the warmth in greetings, the attentiveness in listening, the genuine efforts to understand and meet the diverse needs of every customer. Her presence was no longer a secret but a symbol of accountability. A reminder that the institution she led stood firm against discrimination in all its forms. Behind her, the ripples of change spread beyond the teller windows and office doors. New policies tied bonuses to equity metrics. Training programs were overhauled with insights from civil rights advocates. And customer feedback systems were redesigned to amplify voices that had once been silenced. Angela's vision extended beyond mere compliance. It was a bold commitment to harnessing the full potential of a diverse society. Recognizing that equitable banking was not just a moral imperative but a catalyst for innovation, growth, and community empowerment. The establishment of the Client Equity Advisory Board brought first-hand experiences into the boardroom, bridging the gap between policy and lived reality, and ensuring that the lessons of the past guided the institution's future. Angela Johnson, once dismissed and doubted, had become a beacon of corporate responsibility and transformative leadership, a leader whose legacy was etched not only in the towering glass walls of Meridian Financial's headquarters but in the renewed trust and dignity restored to every customer who walked through its doors. This was more than redemption. It was a renaissance, a powerful testament to what unwavering resolve and courageous action could achieve in the face of systemic injustice. This story teaches us that true leadership means standing up against injustice, challenging biases, and fostering fairness for all, no matter their background. Change starts when we refuse to accept discrimination and commit to creating inclusive spaces where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. If you believe in equality and the power of accountability, support this message by subscribing to our channel. Together, we can inspire change and build a better future.